Welcome to Kashrus on the Air, your weekly radio show dealing with kosher issues for the kosher consumer. And I'm your host, Rabbi Yosef Wickler, editor of Kashrus Magazine. And according to our station manager, you can now see this show live. You go to jrootradio.com. You can see this recorded right here in the studio. And if you want to listen to it or watch it later on, you can do that too at jrootradio.com. And you can call us on 718-506-9099 to hear the show. But if you want to see it live or recorded, you can go to jrootradio.com and you could look for us, which is we're live now, and then afterwards it's recorded in the Kashrus on the Air segment. Tonight's program, we're going to deal with meat. Meat is a topic that everybody has plenty to talk about. Unless you're a vegetarian, everybody has to tie into the meat issue. And it's very confusing. I know for many people, I get a lot of calls, a lot of people consult me about situations regarding invitations to a chasna, etc. And they asking me about what we should do with meat. So I'm going to give you a general guideline tonight. It won't necessarily cover everything, but it'll definitely give you a clear guideline. And hopefully it will be save you a lot of work, and maybe it'll make life easier in general. The issue of meat is an ancient problem. There's so many parts to shrita, nikur, malicha, all the processes involved in getting the meat to you, and the namanis of the person. It's really a complicated issue, the delivery of meat. But things got a lot better in the last number of years. I'm going to take you back a ways. We're here in Flatbush, in Brooklyn, and years ago there was only one hashgacha in Flatbush. That was the Vada Rabbanim of Flatbush. Rabbi Sidney Applebaum was the head at that time when I was, at least when I was aware of it, maybe earlier somebody else. And he told me the following story, which I think is very interesting. He had the opinion, and many people in the kashrus world have that opinion, that they're not going to take any meat products into their establishments. And there were a good 50 to 100 meat establishments, or I shouldn't say meat, the establishments here that were under hashgacha of the Vada Rabbanim of Flatbush, close to 100 hashgachas in their heyday. And at that time, he said, we're not going to take any meat into our establishments unless we go down and check it. So a certain company wanted to get meat into the area here, and he said, we'll have to come down. And he took a group of rabbis, I don't know how many it was, let's say 5, 6 rabbis, and they went on a trip. It was an airplane trip to the place where they're producing the meat. I don't know if that was the actual shechita or was a processing plant. I really don't remember the story that well because I heard it about 30 years ago. Anyway, they come to this plant and they look at it. Everything looks perfect. And they discussing it afterwards, and they're going to sleep. In the morning, they're going back to Brooklyn. And Rabbi Applebaum couldn't sleep. He said something bothered him. I don't remember exactly what it was. I don't know if he ever told me exactly what bothered him, but something bothered him. He just didn't feel confident. Maybe it was just too slick. I don't know what it was. He didn't like something. So he said to the chevra, we may miss the plane, we may catch the plane, but we're going back tomorrow morning. They weren't scheduled to go back the next day. We're going back tomorrow morning. So one of the other rabbis going to say, okay, Rabbi, we'll go with you. So they call a cab, and they go to the place they went to the day before, and the place is absolutely closed. There is nobody there. It's true, it's early in the morning, maybe 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, but still in all, nobody was there. And then they spied a guard. And they went over to the guard, and Rabbi Applebaum said, I don't know how he had the intuition, but he said to the guard, we're supposed to go to the new place. You want to tell us where the new place is? And sure enough, he gave him directions to a different plant entirely, and that's where the actual production was taking place. They had gone to the old factory to show it off to the rabbis. What was wrong with the new factory, I don't know, but obviously that meat was not being taken into Flatbush. That's the way the meat business used to be, not a million years ago, a few decades ago. But we know, well, anybody who's been following Kashrus, either in Kashrus magazine, our regular publication, or on this show, or just in the newspapers in general, you've seen a lot of Kashrus violations in the meat area. We had here in Flatbush on Avenue J where things were being sold as glatt kosher and they weren't glatt kosher, and man had to close up his business and leave. Another situation in Muncie, which everybody knows about, where non-kosher chickens were sold. I think they're discussable about whether it was meat also, but definitely non-kosher chickens were being sold as kosher, and he was a glatt kosher butcher that was used by absolutely everybody. So that was a situation. In Doheny situation in California, where there was a gentleman who also was a distributor, and he was taking in non-kosher meat into his glatt kosher establishment. In order to save money, he was using some non-kosher to cut down the costs. And he snuck it in the middle of the night. He snuck it in. People didn't see it. Same thing with the gentleman in Muncie. He snuck it in at night, processed it at night when the rabbis weren't around. And this is what was being done. So those are very dramatic situations. So has it really changed at all? The answer is yes and no. What's changed is that the kashrus agencies who run the different shchitas are much stronger than they used to be. There are, since Rabashkin started, there are other companies where the ownership of the entire process is in Jewish hands. There are places where they're shechting, where we have more control, we have a higher amount that we're buying, where we have toughened up in our distribution to the point where there's a tremendous level of confidence that what was supposed to be kosher and glatt kosher is actually coming in that way. So yes, the situation has tightened up. What is a problem is in the secondary marketplace. That is where there always has been a problem, and it hasn't been resolved. It may never be. Hopefully, it will be. But promises. We haven't gotten to the point where we can say everything is solid in the secondary marketplace. Now, I'm going to explain a little bit what that means. But before I do that, let me just say that at the present time, the general consensus, I'm not saying everybody will agree with my statement, but the general consensus is that pretty much all of the so-called Hamish, glatt kosher meat producers are doing a very good job. Now, you have to understand, it's a tremendous undertaking to do a meat business. The size, let's say, Rabashkin had, now I agree, where a man has to be there in charge of everything that goes on in the plant, and it has to be from the rabbi who's giving the hashgacha. So you have to have a man who's full time on top of absolutely everything there, because the rabbi is involved in other things in his life, is giving other hashgachas, and he doesn't live out there, and these are way away from New York. So you have to have a person that's there all the time, who is absolutely competent beyond belief to maintain the whole situation. It's a big undertaking and a big plan, a very, very major undertaking. But the people have gotten up to that level where they're doing a very, very good job. So there are people who will only use one shechita, one situation, and they're makpid on that. And I can understand that. But if you want to make a statement about the meat business today, I would say in the primary meat departments, where they're producing the meat, I would say things are pretty much in order, and people could feel confidence if they want to rely on any of the shchitas. That we're talking about glatt kosher shchita, that is under a hamish hashgacha, and basically whether it's in this country or outside of this country, I mean American companies. I'm not necessarily talking about Europe or in Israel. I'm talking about here, American companies, wherever they're producing it. Basically, this is the way the people feel. Whether it's 100% true, 90% true, but it's a pretty good statement. So if people want to feel confident that way, I have no problem with that. But there are other issues. There are plenty of other issues. One of the issues is the secondary market. Now, to understand the secondary market, imagine, if you will, a small town, It's not Buffalo, New York's not a small town, but it's far away from New York City. So in the old days, how did they get kosher meat and chicken up in Buffalo? The company Will, that's Will, that's the guy's name. Will's Meats or whatever he called himself. He used to supply the different kosher venues for the people up in Buffalo. I don't know how they get their things now. So this goes back about 35 years ago. So Will was bringing up all the things. He was bringing up Empire chickens for somebody that I know, and that person was a rabbi in a shul, and he used to get Empire chickens in a case. But Will was bringing up all kinds of meats, kosher and non-kosher, chickens that were kosher and non-kosher. And sure enough, because of the trip all the way up to Buffalo, things shaked around in his truck, and sure enough, very often the crates of chicken were broken, and inside there was no simonim. Now on the outside package, on the outside crate, there were simonim. It was shown up that it was, was sealed, whatever, but it was broken. So whatever there was no more. So here you have a situation where Will is bringing up kosher and non-kosher, and the chickens are rolling around in the back of his truck, literally, until he throws them back into the box. And some of them didn't come with plumbers. Some of them didn't come with plumbers, and they weren't packaged with a special plastic around it. It was in its crate. He put it back in. Said I couldn't use those chickens. They had to return them. So it was a crazy thing, and he could for a long time. So he wrote an article for Kashrus magazine, this rabbi, and this goes back, as I say, many, many years ago, about 35 years ago. Maybe 34, 35 years ago. Well, what happened was that because of the article that we had in Kashrus magazine, there was a Rabbi Hirschsprung in Canada who was a Lubavitcher, and he had a lot of importance in the community. He was very well respected Rabbi Hirschsprung, and he heard about the article that we wrote about Will bringing up the chickens and the crates cracking and everything like that, and he heard about it, and he instructed his people that we have to change the way we're importing chickens from the United States because of the article that was in Kashrus magazine. It's one of those articles that had a very profound effect. We only found out about it, after the fact through somebody who told somebody, whoever it is, that ended up that got the information. But that's the kind of thing that used to occur. Today, people who produce in the in the factories, where they're doing the shrita, they're more careful in the packaging. Can things be delivered wrong? Yes, 150%. But usually it'd be a situation where you would know about it. So, for example, let's going back to the Rabashkin days, because Rabashkin is not here anymore. Whether I don't know how Agri is set up, but the Rabashkin, he had different levels of shrita. And I don't want to discuss it because it's not really nogea to anything anymore, but it was very interesting, the different levels of shechita that he had, different people who did different shechitas out there. Anyway, he had, after the shechita was done, and they were checking the animals, sometimes they had shilas. So very often the glad kosher people would not take that. The glad kosher people would shift it off to the regular kosher. And there was a rabbi in charge of the regular kosher. It wasn't the OU. It was a rabbi, well-known rabbi, who gives a certification on the non-galat meat at Rabashkin. That's what he did. And that was being used by different people who wanted non-galat meat. And it was obviously done at the Rabashkin plant, but whatever was a shaila was shoved over to his department, and he had to decide if they accept it. Now, sometimes people were getting that meat mixed in with their meat, or if they asked for for example they asked for a Beis Yosef glat, they were getting non-Beis Yosef glat sent over. So this is the kind of thing that happens in real time from a factory. But you know what you're getting, you know how it's coming, you know where it's coming from, and you have kosher coming out there. Obviously, the non-kosher is sent to the non-kosher department very quickly, and that doesn't get mixed in. But you can have mistakes occurring. You could order certain kinds of cuts, and you get another one. That's packaging issues, and it doesn't mean to say there was anything wrong, and everyone knew what to return, and that's how it was done. That was life. So, but the point is, yes, situations can occur. Now, but let's get to the secondary market because that is the interesting area. So before we do, I'm going to just take a moment to talk about our sponsor, which is Glattmart, conveniently located at 1205 Avenue M. Whenever I think of Glattmart, I think of price, service, convenience, and quality. Whether you shop for a few items or for a full wagon load, you can save plenty of money by shopping at Glattmart. And at Glattmart, you'll save time using their valet parking service. Just pull into Glattmart from the East 12th Street entrance. They'll park the car for you and have it ready to load up with all the special items which you purchase in the store. And right now, on sale, you can get, that's today and tomorrow, you have raw tilapia fillets, $3.29 a pound. Snapple, 64 ounce, $1.89. Mahadran Fit and Free ice cream bars, 6-pack, $4.99. These are some of the items that are on sale as we speak now, today and tomorrow. Starting on Wednesday, you can have family pack chuck ground beef at $4.49 a pound. Semi-boneless chuck, $7.99 a pound. Veal scallopini, $16.99 a pound. And Aaron's Best chicken breast with wing, that's what we just mentioned, Aaron's, that's the new ones, the go for Rabashkin, $1.99 a pound. Beef blade London broil, $9.99 a pound. And chicken cubes at $3.99 a pound. Those are some of the sale items at Glattmart starting on Wednesday. And at Glattmart, the quality of the meats is A1, with kosher certification from both the Star K and the Vada Kashrus of Flatbush, with Beis Yosef meats and with expert Nikor. At Glattmart, you're getting quality Kashrus. Glattmart is at 1205 Avenue M. Meeting your shopping needs is their top priority. If you meet Dov in Glattmart, tell him you heard about Glattmart on Kashrus on the Air over Jroot Radio. Now I'm going to get back to the topic that I'm discussing, which is the meat business. We're talking about secondary meat market. This is where pretty much most of the questions come up. If you look back on it, the Avenue J story, the Muncie story, the Doheny story out in California, all of these stories took place in a secondary market. That was not the shrita. That was somebody who was a distributor. And when distributors are making money, they're making money from the buying and the selling. They can't control the raw cost. They're given a certain cost, and the markup has to be sufficiently low to get a business. So they're caught a little bit in between, because if they go too high, they'll lose out to their competitors, and they have to have enough room for themselves to maneuver in the middle. So this is where they're often caught, and obviously the temptation of taking that extra money, of making the extra money by buying cheap, which means not kosher, that's a very big temptation to them. So I want to just tell you a quick story. Maybe we've said it before, but it's worth hearing it if you didn't hear it before. Many, many years ago, Rabbi Abraham Juravel, he's now with the OU. At that time, he was working for KAJ, for Breuer's Kahal Adas Yeshurun. And they did the Shrita. They found that people were saying that they're getting so many tongues coming out, and they can't imagine how many tongues there are, because they seem to be more tongues than the animals they shechted. So they decided to do an experiment. Rabbi Juravel took his children, they were youngsters then, and he said to them, here are the plumbers that we're going to use this week at the Schlachthaus. I want you to take each one of them and make a krechs in it. I want you to make a little scrape in it with a knife. But it shouldn't be something that you could see blatantly. It should be something that you'd have to look and then you see it. Because they don't want anybody to realize you put it on there. But I want each one to have a little bit of a cut, and this way we'll be able to find it. So they sat there a couple of hours going through a large number of plumbers that were going to be put on the tongues of the following week at the Schlachthaus. You put them in, they gave them out, And Rabbi Juravel told me, wouldn't you believe it? There are tongues coming out this week without anything being scraped off on the plumber. It means they were fake. Now, what happened was, I'm going to explain it to you so you understand exactly what happened. Broyers did not own their own shechita. They didn't own the slaughterhouse. They didn't own the animals. They bought it. They bought it and got it as theirs. Then it was sold to distributors because Broyers is a Jewish communal organization. They're not a distributor of meats, so it went to different distributors. And everybody, it went into hands of people who had kosher and non-kosher and all kinds of different shchitas. So that's what happened. And yet there was one place, Schild's Brothers, which was up in Washington Heights. Maybe there was one more, but I remember Schild Brothers because that's the one we ended up using because of this whole story. So Schild Brothers used to have a situation where they bought directly from the manufacturer, from the Schlachthaus, from the slaughterer. They didn't buy from a middleman. They were a direct end user who bought straight from the slaughterhouse. How they able to do it, the volume, I don't know, but that's what they did. And we're in Washington Heights, so the people from Broyers, the Broyers community is up in Washington Heights, and those are the people who are buying mostly from them. But I was in Brooklyn, and I had to get it schlepped down, and I'll tell you the story about that in one moment. But we were getting our meats taken from Schild's brother. This way, we had direct line. There was no middleman. And that's what we had to do to get that kind of safety in the meat area in those days, okay? In today's world, it's much more common to have the people getting directly from the slaughterhouse, and we have slaughterhouses where the control is much different. We have the alley, and you have the meal which is Meal Mart, and you have Agri, which is a big competitor of theirs, which is the old Rabashkin, and they're often supplying directly to supermarkets and to butchers, so that actually you're not having a middleman, but there are middlemen. There are plenty of middlemen, and restaurants end up using middlemen, and some butcher stores are using middlemen, and this is the way they get different supplies of different meats from different hashkachas. It makes it easier for them, and sometimes they want to have multiple suppliers, so they might get from a company directly and also from a middleman. Whatever it is, they end up using these middlemen, and the middlemen are only as good as they are. Are they religious Jews? Are they honest Jews? Are they really, really honest Jews? This is the question. Are the plumbers coming out from the wrong animal? I mean, this is the question. Very, very hard thing. Rabbi Juravel showed us many times, that plumbers can be taken off and reused. It's a fact of life. Now they're getting into holograms and other things. Yes, there are upgrades in the system, and they're being utilized. Hopefully, their protections are very strong. I'll just tell you a quick story also here. Also, I don't know if I finished everything here. I wanted to tell you the story about the meat coming to me. I may have said this before also. And that is the one time I usually get delivered by somebody from the Schild brothers. And then one time I got from the owner. The owner lived in Borough Park. I don't know if his name was Schild, and I don't remember anymore. Too many years ago. This is like 20, 30 years ago. But we got from Schild brothers, and the owner came to the house and he delivered the meat. And sure enough, the meat came in a double sealed package. I said to him, "You're the owner. I trust you. Well, you didn't have to come with a double sealed package. You take it whoever you bring in, I would have taken." He said, "Nothing leaves the store." This is where the Broyers was. Nothing leaves the store without a double seal on it. And this is way back. People weren't all doing it then. But everything leaves the store, even though it's going with me, it cannot leave the store without a double seal on it. I'm very impressed by that. Anyway, that's one of the types of problems that existed, and that's one of the reasons why it's very important to know the source of your meat. And that brings me to the next topic, which is absolutely nogeya to almost everybody listening to the show. And that is what we call repackaging. Because when you go to the stores, whether it is a store, let's say a big supermarket, or even sometimes in butchers, a lot of times that meat is coming to you repackaged. And what happens is you see a packaging. It says on the packaging the name of the shrita. It may say the name of the rabbi. It may say the name of the store and the weight and the price. Where was that put on? Where was that done? More times than not, all of that is done right in the store, which means they're taking a large supply of meat, which they get from a distributor or from the actual source of the slaughterhouse, and then they cut it up into slices, the sizes and the configuration that they want, and then they weigh it and put it into the package, just close up the package and weigh it. And so they're claiming that the meat was the shrita that they say. And very often they had several shritas running in this at the same time being sold in the store. So how do you know that what it says in the label is what's inside the package? So for years, nobody knew. And you relied on the owner. And the owner, hopefully he's honest, hopefully about this, but fine. But we don't know. So now a lot of places have repackaging, and they have a rabbi on the certification of Rabbi so-and-so. You have to understand, what is Rabbi so-and-so got to do with this whole thing? In some cases, he probably just relies on the owner and has nothing to do with any mashgiach or anything. He's like, if a leslecha man, I rely on him, etc. In some cases, he may have a mashgiach in the store, and the mashgiach has responsibilities, might check vegetables. He may do a lot of different things. It could be very involved. We had one of the mashgichim from a store from the Organic Circle we had here a few weeks ago. He has a very full-time job there, the mashgiach. You could be he's a mashgiach for hashgacha, and part of it could be in charge of the repackaging. But I want to tell you that I know for a fact that most of the time there is no mashgiach standing there. There is no Jew standing there when they're packaging the meat. Even if it's under hashgacha of a rabbi, then even if the rabbi has a mashgiach in the store, usually he's not there. He's doing something else. I've gone to the stores, I've seen the repackaging, and he's talking to me up in the office. He's talking to me, showing me different things in the place. He's not anywhere near the repackaging that's going on. And whether it's a repackaging of nuts and candies or it's repackaging of meat, he's not there at all. So really, what are we relying on? Relying on some oversight by some rabbi or some mashgiach, an orthodox frum owner that we sort of rely upon. Maybe we're relying on the fact that they only take one shrit in the store, etc. But it would be nice to know things like, are they getting it from the slaughterhouse or are they getting it from a secondary distributor? Because then you have a double problem. You're getting the repackaging and you're getting it from a middleman. And now we have more reason to suspect that something may not be going well. So this is the kind of issue that is important for us as a consumer to inquire about. Where is this meat that's coming into my house coming from? If you can trace it back and you're satisfied with the sources, good. If not, now you can start to think. I would love to have somebody that I know is 1,000% and he's only getting from one source from the slaughterhouse. I'd love to have no repackaging. I'd love it to come, prepackaged. I love this, I love that. Well, do the best you can to get what you want. And then when you go out to eat, it's good to ask the restaurant or the hashgacha, I hear it, you're using this and this meat. Where do you get it from? You get it directly from the slaughterhouse? Do you get it from a secondary distributor? And you have to be satisfied with that. If you're not familiar, check it out. I see we have a call, so okay. You check it out. Make sure that you're satisfied with how it came to you. Was that middleman a shomer Torah mitzvahs? Does he only deal with very hamish meats? Or are we talking about somebody who handles kosher and non-kosher in the same establishment and sending out to this person this and this person that? That's back at Will's again. We're back to where we were 35 years ago on the way up to Buffalo, where we're mixing treif and kosher together. I mean, I don't know if you realize it, but a lot of places do ship treif and kosher in the hanging meats on the hanging, the four quarters, the hanging on hooks in trucks right next to non-kosher meat, and it's all exposed. There's not even anything draping it. This is what's done, but we need tight control, very, very tight control. This is something that we, as consumers, have to be responsible to find out about. Yes, the Kashrus agencies are working to tighten it up. They've done a lot to improve the shrita. The Nika problems are nothing compared to what was 40 years ago. I don't know if we have time tonight to go through the Nika problems of 40 years ago, but let's just simply say we've gone a long way in this country. We've come a long way from the 50s, where Kashrus was a fake. The 30s and 40s and 50s, where Kashrus was a fake. We've gone through, the 70s and 80s, where we got a lot of kinks out of it. We're now in a more sophisticated mode. Yes, we have problems, and yes, there are going to be people that are going to cheat, and yes, they may wear yarmulkes and claim to be Orthodox, and they may cheat people, but we have to make sure that we do the best we can to protect ourselves. I'll take the first call. I hope it's on this topic. This is Rabbi Wickler. You're on the air now. Go ahead.
Hi. I have a quick question. I saw a poster from Ben and Jerry's ice cream that they're coming out with Hariv non-dairy ice cream now.
Yeah, I saw it also, but I saw very good. Okay, what can I tell you?
Is that something, I guess, is like, I know it's Chav K, so they have a DE as opposed to the OU doesn't have DE anymore.
It didn't come out yet, right?
I'm not sure if it's out yet in stores. I know that they're advertising it already.
You don't know if it's going to be part of a dairy or dairy equipment. You don't know. Non-dairy.
It says non-dairy on it.
What?
It says non-dairy on the container. They have pictures.
No. You don't. Let me explain to you.
And DE, dairy equipment.
Oh, it says DE?
Yeah, that's going to say Chav K DE.
Right, because it's the same machinery, and some of the stuff might actually be still there, and you'll have to discuss with the Chav K whether, if you're makpid on, let's say, Chalav Yisrael, then you'd have to ask the Chav K whether there's a compromise for Chalav Yisrael. This is a cold process, and it could very well be that there's significant amount of product left on from the ice cream. Now you ask me, how could that be? But it says non-dairy. They have that even with the non-dairy creamers that actually dairy. They have sodium caseinate in it. The dairy designation does not the same for you and for me. If it says that there is no, a person who is allergic to dairy has no business using a product that comes from a company, which is basically a dairy company, unless they're very, very, very guaranteed that there's no problem with it. 90% of the time, they can get very sick from products that say non-dairy or whatever, that come from a dairy company. I like say, for example, I'll give you a more dramatic example. A lot of the orange juice is made in dairies. It says it right on the label. This is made in this dairy farm. And the orange juice is done at the end of the day. They do the dairy all day long and it's pasteurized on the equipment. And then at the end of the day, they clean it briefly. And then they do the orange juice. And then afterwards, they do a heavy cleaning before the night. So yes, they want to get the milk off because of the bacteria, because of some legal issues also. But as far as actually cleaning it, they don't clean it sufficiently, and people who are allergic could get very sick from that.
But is it the OU's policy now? I know they don't do DE anymore. They just do D. Is that correct? And the Chav still does DE?
Right. Well, the OU never did DE. Never. The OU's position is that we don't need to do DE. We do just use a D because the people should not ever be compromised. In other words, they're protecting you by doing that.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good evening. Okay, so I'm going to just go on to one or two more areas, and maybe then we'll be able to open the questions up for anything at all. I want to tell you about another area in the meat area, and that is the livers. We're familiar with it to a certain extent. Just it's good to remind ourselves that livers are something that very often are not, haven't been kosher within 3 days. Livers can't be salted because of the a large amount of blood inside. It has to be broiled. Very often they'll sell you liver, whether it's a chicken liver or a beef liver, and it hasn't been koshered. If it hasn't been koshered, meaning broiled, within 3 days, then it should not be sauteed. So people like to make chopped liver, and they like to saute it in onions. So that's something that should only be done if you know that the livers are within 3 days of the shrita when you broil it. How do you know that? It's a little hard. So some companies, let's say Meal Mart, Ali, they do the shrita and they process it, and you buy it in the store Meal Mart, so you can be sure that they do that within 3 days. But a lot of times they're selling you in a butcher store liver, and it hasn't been koshered, or it was koshered, but was within 3 days. That is something you'd have to find out in a particular store. Don't be surprised to find out that they tell you we don't represent it as within 3 days. We don't represent it as within 3 days. That is unfortunately the fact. Most stores cannot guarantee that the chicken livers, because there's thousands of them come at once, or even the beef liver, they cannot guarantee that it has been broiled within 3 days. I remember one store in particular, they used to take the beef livers and have it broiled outside the store. So first they got it delivered. That's a day or two after the shrita. Then they gave it into another store to broil it. And then he may not have done it the second it came in. So there was no guarantee at all that it was being done within 3 days. But this store is a very honest store, and they posted a sign. And if you asked any questions, they looked at the sign and they saw our meats today, our livers today are within 3 days and not within 3 days. They would tell you. Most stores don't even bother to tell you anymore about this. And it's something that every consumer should find out about. Somebody says that there was an OUDE designation many years ago. He just emailed me in here. I'm not familiar with it, but it's been a long time since they did. But he said it's not true that they never had it. Again, wasn't familiar with it, but if it was for a brief time. It certainly wasn't a common thing, and the policy of the OU is to avoid it. That's their point. Okay.
Wickler, let me ask you,
But let me just tell everybody if they want to
Yes.
call in. We can now take calls on any topic. Talk to us about any topic about Kashrus. 718-683-5858. 718-683-5858. And if you want to text, 347-927-8398. Texting 347-927-8398. Yes, go ahead.
In electronics, you have a kind of an idea that always, let's say that you take a stereo system and you have the best speakers and you have the best amplifier and the worst preamplifier or the worst microphone, you always hear the worst part. Even you have the best things, instrument.
Right.
So we're looking here on the kashrut of the basar especially, and we are here puzzling, because every time we're coming and we're studying, you jump over the shchita, and this is, I don't know, it seems like
We had somebody talked about Shrita,
Yeah, Shrita is-
and his feeling. We had somebody on the show a few years ago, Moshe Yerman, and basically his feeling is that most of the Shrita today are pretty solid. I want to tell you that I saw some very interesting things at Shrita. I saw where there were compromises, and there's no question there can be compromises. I just didn't discuss it in length. Let me just take this call, and then we'll discuss what you're talking about. Go ahead, you're on Kashrus on the air. Can I help you?
Yeah, hi. I want to know what's the story with grapes?
Grapes, we recommend a washing procedure that takes about 15 minutes.
How do you do it?
You take water, put the grapes in the water. First of all, take the grapes there's a big cluster, and break it into small little clusters. I don't know how big, 5 grapes, 10 grapes, whatever it is, small grapes, small clusters. Put it in the water, put some soap in there. You can do the dish soap, or you can do the fruit wash soap, whatever it is, some kind of soap, and stir it around a little bit with your hand,
Okay.
and let it stay there for 3 minutes. And then, after you've done that, take them out and put them under the faucet and wash them off.
Okay, fine.
And then and then do this 2 more times. Do the
Okay,
soaking
fine.
in water again 2 more times, and the washing under the faucet. It should take 15 minutes, but you can do pounds and pounds of the stuff, as much as you want for that Shabbos or for that day. But it's going to take you 15 minutes, and this is guaranteed to us that this takes care of it.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much for your show.
We have a lot of calls, but I want to just make a. I ask the people if they can just wait a minute, and I'm just going to go on to one part that I really should be saying. There are people, and I'm going to discuss it with you briefly. There are people who are makbid to use only one shaychet. This one shaychet shechs for them. Now, I'm going to buy a whole cow? It's not possible. Right. So they get together a few people and they have a shrita. They trust this rabbi. He's known to them. And they buy an animal. He shechs it. Obviously, it's some place where you don't get arrested for doing it. It's legal to do it, I suppose. You shecht, and then they cut it up. It's not so hard to cut it up. Usually the shochet knows how to do it. Somebody else knows how to do it. People buy the meat based upon the weight and this and that. And you have your own little system. And they store it. And they have for months and months like that, from this one shechita. People are like that. There are people who do that. They are 100% on target, because there's nothing that can go wrong as long as that shochet is a good man, and he checked his knife with a proper person. The knife is checked properly, and he knows all the parts of the animal properly. He knows all about what makes it a treifa and not makes a treifa. Then we can say that's the best system. Then there's small shritas. Some of the small shritas are outstanding. There's one in Muncie that everybody knows. There's a supermarket, and he has his own private shrita, which he does, and the Welt says it's very, very, very good. I don't know it. I've never seen it, but people say it's very solid. It's all controlled by him. Then you get to a little bit bigger suppliers, and there's a man, let's say, for example, who does pellet chickens. So that he used to be a sheichet at Falls, and he left Falls because he had standards that I don't think were reflected in the establishment that he was working for. And he went in to start his own business. His name is Franklin, and very ehrliche yid. And everybody holds from his shechita. It's a beautiful shechita. And you could go and watch it yourself. And anybody who wants to come could see it. And it's a very slow process. Those chickens are held. They walk around the room. They walk around the floor. They walk outside. You see them, healthy chickens, not something grabbed out of a crate, held by a goy, and the yid shechs them 600 to 1,000 in an hour. Bang, bang, bang. That it's not done that way. It's done with the old style way, where the sheichet holds them, and where the because in Israel they won't accept our shritas in America because we don't hold the chickens. We have the goy holding it. The yid takes the head in his hand, but he doesn't hold the chicken. And they wouldn't accept chickens from America. When they want to import chickens from here to Eretz Israel, they make sure that it's done according to a different method. The method is used in Israel. So yes, you take somebody like Franklin and his shrita over there, Pella, and that is a very solid shrita, and it's all very doable because it's all controlled by him. And there is a mashgiach and et cetera, et cetera. The salt that they used for the chickens, I'm telling you, it wasn't taking a bath in the salt. It was like the 2.5 feet that fell here in New York. That's the way the salt looked. It was piled up to the sky. It was amazing. This was everything taken very, very seriously. And then you go on from there to different other shritas have other better or worse. So, but if you're not going to limit yourself to one thing, then yes, you have to make a decision. And basically, the main shritas that Hamish Yidden are running and Hamish Hashkachas on it, yes, they are all being done in a very good way, more or less similar. I'm not saying there isn't anything you could improve on. I'm not saying a person can't be makbid. We said a person can take one single shrita and be happy with that, or one individual. But you're talking about the quality. It's changed from the way it was. We're taking some callers. Oh, you're on Kashrus on the air. Can we help you?
Me?
Yes, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I would like to know, is OK cereal good as OU cereal?
We don't make a decision for you on the show about which hashgachas you should use. But the
No, I want to know if OU is the same.
OK, but I would say to you, the OK and the OU are
Is that
very
like the same? Actually, like I'm saying, is that like the same?
It's like the same standard, right? It's the same.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, it
So
is.
if I OU, then I'm ready to okay.
I think you would be happy with either one. If you're using one, I think you'd be just as happy with the other.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for calling. Go ahead. You're on Kashrus on the air. Can I help you?
Hello?
Yeah, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, do you have to check sunflower seeds before you eat them?
Sunflower seeds?
Yeah.
So let me tell you, you're talking about they're in the shell or they're out
Yeah.
of the shell? They're in the shell. So you would just look at the shells in your hand, take a bunch in your hand, and look and see if it looks like anything got in or out of it. It looks like a nibble on the side or cracked like that. Then there might have been something that went in. But otherwise, it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, thank you.
You certainly.
By the way, my grandfather's a Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, that your grandfather, great-grandfather?
Grandfather. I'm his last grandson.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. Rabbi Usher Zimmerman was my Rebbe for 30 years, and my son is married to his granddaughter.
Oh.
So you know who that is? You know who it is?
What's her name?
Crone. Her name was Crone.
Oh, Crone, yeah.
Okay. Hey, take care. Thank you for calling in.
All right, okay, bye.
We have some interesting questions that people texted in over here. Somebody asked here, a K Hersher on a cereal. So then he mentioned something which I think is from the Kellogg's company. I'm not sure. And if it's from the Kellogg's company, even though it just says K, it's from the KVH, the Vad HaRabbanim of Massachusetts. We don't make decisions on the air about which hashgachas to rely upon. The person who asked me before about the OU and the OK, I said that they're similar. I just didn't say what everybody should do. Then somebody asked, where does this person shecht? I don't know if they're referring to me. I don't shecht. Maybe they're asking about Rabbi Franklin shechs for pellet chickens. He owns pellet chickens. There's some kind of fancy name for it now, but that's who he is. I saw him do this many years ago, and his chickens have always had a high reputation, and they're very expensive because of the quality and the fact that it's a slow process. It's a very interesting machine I saw at this factory also. The people asked here about buying canned olives, pickles, and more from Israel, which are from Shemitah, but grown by a non-Jew. So that's interesting. If it was grown by a non-Jew, means on non-Jewish territory, so then there's a machlokes between the minig of Yerushalayim and the minig of Bnei Brak. In Bnei Brak, they don't rely on non-Jewish produce in the land of Israel. They want you to get something from Chutz La'aretz. The badatz of the Eda Charedis in Yerushalayim relies on the non-Jewish, we call Yavul Nochri, a non-Jewish productions. So I don't know what it says on the packaging, but definitely you got to get a good hashgacha, and if you have a good hashgacha, then you don't have to worry about this whole issue. And as far as which minhag to follow, I mean, you can ask your rabbanim, but I think most of the Bnei Torah are not so makpid on minhag Yerushalayim versus minhag Bnei Brak. It's more an issue for Israelis. There are some cans that say it's the 6th year, and some say it's from a non-Jew. Well, obviously the 6th year is good, according to everybody. And if it's from a non-Jew, so that it may have the badatz of the Eda Charedis, but that is considered acceptable by the most religious standards in Israel, except for the people who have the minig of Bnei Brak. Then somebody asked me here, I was told that First Choice and Gerber Baby Chars have the same hashgacha. Is that correct? I didn't know the answer to that. I don't know which hashgacha it has, so I can't really help you with that. Somebody asked over here about stickers. I can't read that too well here. Seems it had a sticker from, and then it stops the discussion. And then somebody mentioned Rabbi Moshe Yerman, which I mentioned earlier, and I think that's all we have here. And as far as the question about stickers, Sticker. Oh, wait, there's a million calls. Okay, but stickers are like this. If the sticker was put on and it doesn't say anything but a hashgacha's name, stay away from it. Let it say the name of the company. If it says the name of the company and the name of the product and the hashgacha, that's a good sticker. Okay, next caller. You're on Kashrus on the air. Can we help you?
Yes, my question is regarding, let's say Oreo cookies, right? Somebody that's allergic to it, it just says contains, let's say, wheat. So why don't you even put a D? The whole it's powder.
No. I'll explain to you like this. When they write a D, you say a D on there? It's an OUD?
Yeah, there's OUD.
Okay, you have to speak to the OU about it every 6 months, and they will tell you whether or not there's any dairy in the product. A lot of times, you can't tell there's dairy in the product. Let's say, for example, there are ingredients like flavors and emulsifiers and other things. You think that they're parva and they're nothing. The truth is they could be dairy. So when you
but today's days with the allergy on the package just says contains soy. Now, if somebody's allergic, they can't play around with these things.
No. I'll explain it to you. There's all kinds of levels. We mentioned earlier that you could have sodium caseinate, which is a derivative of milk, which according to halach is 100% dairy. And you could say non-dairy creamer because the government doesn't want you to call it dairy unless there's milk in it. So you're right that if you had real milk inside and a small amount, whether it didn't say parva, you have to put it on the label. It's a question, otherwise you can get sued. But things that are not, you have to know a lot about the law. A lot of times, the ingredients that could be dairy that you don't have to have, and you don't have to say dairy on the product. Okay. Thank you very much for the call. I got a million calls. Okay. You're on the air. Go ahead. Kashrus on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, this is Rabbi Wickler. I'm on the air with you.
Hi. In school, these people snob people out, and now they're nice to me, but they're usually always trying to do this.
All right. Well, there's a show where they talk about the problems they have in school. It's Simcha Cohen does that. But right, we would talk on this show about Kashrus. So if it doesn't tie into that, I'm really not able to help you. But I think your mother and your father can help you. And if you want to call back, Dr. Simcha Cohen is here. What time?
Wednesday, 8 to 9.
Wednesday, 8 to 9, and he would take that question up. Thank you for calling.
8 to 9?
Yes.
Yeah, Wednesday.
8 to 9.
What's the number?
This number here, the same number.
Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye. Okay, you're on Kashrus on the air. Can I help you?
Yeah, hi. Is that me?
Yes, it's you.
Hi. I wanted to know the proper way of cleaning and checking a portobello mushroom.
I don't have my book in front of me, so I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Ah.
If you don't have Rabbi Vaya's book, it would be worth getting it. There's different kinds of mushrooms, but basically the black thing on the bottom has to be removed. Past that, I can't tell you. There is more stuff he says in the book, but I don't remember it by heart, and I can't be. If you call us at the office, 718-336-8544, I will tell you. You leave a message, we'll get back to you, 718-336-8544.
Thank you so much for your show. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye. You're on Kashrus on the air. Can we help you?
You call us at the office, 718-336.
Okay, you're on the air. If you could turn that down, we'll hear you.
We'll get back. Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd like to know the difference between Glat and Beis Yosef Shchita.
Okay. First of all, thank you for calling. I recognize who it is right away. But
Thank you.
Okay. The Glat in America today has a number of sirchos. The people who listen to the show don't know about that. I just got to explain briefly. I don't know if we get everything else done tonight. A sircha is a connection from the lung to the diaphragm. And when the first shech the animal, there's a bidikas panim where the mashgiach puts his hand in the animal and feels around and sees if there are any of these adhesions, and then he notes it, and then when they take the lung out, they examine the lung and see if they see these sirchos at that time, and then they have to make a decision. So what they do is, if there are 3 sirchos or more, there are more than 3 sirchos, there are 4 or more adhesions, then they don't sell it as glatt kosher. They sell it as regular kosher. If it's 3 or less, then they try to remove them, and then they examine by blowing up the lung to see if there's any holes. That's basically what they call glatt today, even though it has a number of adhesions. Beis Yosef glatt is supposed to have 0 adhesions. That's what's supposed to be. The trouble is that there's a lot of pressure to get Beis Yosef glatt, and therefore there may be issues, which I don't want to discuss tonight. Okay?
Where do they get so many Beis Yosef behaviors?
It's interesting, I admit. It's interesting. And for many years, Rabbi Heinemann from Baltimore refused to give Beis Yosef glatt a name. But there was so much pressure put on him that he even acquiesced also. So we're living in a time, always pressure, pressure, pressure. We live with pressure, and the Kashrus agencies live with pressure, and you know what pressure produces. So thank you very much for the call.
Okay, I'm going to call you tomorrow at the office.
Okay, thank you.
About something else, totally different.
Okay, you're another caller. Good, you're on Kashrus on the air. You're on
Hello?
Kashrus on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Is a plastic tablecloth on the milchige table enough to put fleshing on top?
Are you putting a plastic tablecloth? You mean a throwaway thing?
A regular plain plastic tablecloth that's disposable.
So is that enough to put what?
To put the fleshing on top?
As opposed to, you mean you have milchiks underneath it?
What?
You mean the table itself is dairy? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be good, but but you have to be sure it's not hot food, because the hot food could spill and maybe leach through. And even if it doesn't leach through, it's going to produce moisture. That'll be the leaching through. So I mean, I'm not happy if you're putting a bowl of soup there with nothing else underneath it. I would say put a plate with a bowl of soup in it. On top of that, you're great.
But if you just put plain regular food that's not hot, it's good?
No problem. No problem. You don't need anything more than that.
And if it's hot food, you can't.
If it's hot food, it's not a question. We're worried about it making a hole inside or leaching through, because it's very thin, those things. And we're always worried that the hot food, even kli rishon or even kli sheni, and it's burning hot, it may be able to, it's called the ad nifetzvo, it might go through, and we're concerned with that. So yes, we would want you to put a plate. Thank you very much for the call.
Bye.
We have no more time? Okay, so until next week, this is your host, Rabbi Yosef Wickler, editor of Kashrus Magazine.